Two best friends vanish in '91. 24 years later, a $40 suitcase is claimed. Inside a ladder key, a cassette whispering no lights, and a second key to a room hidden beneath fairground bleachers. Fake checkpoints, church orange cones, a van with a caged door. Someone filed people like paperwork and kept the lights on. Before he runs the routine again. Who's holding the final key? And what's still sealed under Bay 12? Like this, subscribe, don't look away as we unravel the stories hidden in the shadows. They called them inseparable, two kids who learned to braid friendship into something tougher than rope. On Friday, June 14, 1991, best friends Danny Harper and Tessa McCoy left a backyard graduation party in Yakima, Washington, promising to make it to Seattle by midnight for a college orientation weekend. They never made it to Seattle. And for years the story ended there. Two girls, a gray '86 Corolla, and a 20-minute gap along I-90 that swallowed them whole. But 24 years later, on September 12, 2015, at a small-town storage auction in Ellensburg, a battered maroon suitcase rolled across a parking lot, sold for $40, and changed the case from a question mark into an arrow pointing at someone who had never been part of the story. Because the moment that suitcase's photo hit Facebook, a stranger messaged the buyer with 7 words no one expected. "That's mine. I can prove it. Cash. No bodies. No crime scene. Just a suitcase that didn't want to be owned." We open with the sounds of a highway at dusk. Trucks downshifting, a payphone ringing, cicadas somewhere underneath it all. Danny and Tessa leave the party at 8:53 p.m. The last photo of the night is a disposable flash. Tessa's red windbreaker, Danny's half-zipped hoodie, the Tacoma Dome circled in blue ink on a AAA map. A friend remembers Tessa saying, "If we hit the canyon before 10, we'll be in the city by midnight." That canyon vantage splits the state in two. The river there doesn't gossip, keeps secrets. By 9:27 p.m., the girls stop at a Chevron near Kittitas for gas and a Dr. Pepper. The clerk later tells police he remembers the windbreaker and the way they counted cash carefully. They were going somewhere that mattered. At 9:42, the Corolla pulls onto I-90 westbound. And then the record skips. No more bank activity. No calls from the payphone outside the station. The next car that looks like theirs, captured by a toll camera, is a sedan with a bike rack. Wrong plates, wrong shadow on the rear bumper. Detectives circle back through the canyon for the 100th time and find nothing. Parents keep the porch light on. In 1991, porch lights were prayers. For 2 years the investigation tries to walk forward but keeps stepping in its own footprints. There's a rumor of a pickup truck with a custom bull bar. A rumor of a man who follows college girls at a park and ride. A rumor about a substitute teacher who collects matchbooks from bars he claims he's never visited. A pawn ticket for a camera shows up in Spokane, but the serial numbers don't match. A fisherman finds a red windbreaker snagged on basalt, but the zipper is from a brand Tessa never wore. Every trail sounds promising and then dissolves. Sometimes that's incompetence. Sometimes it's the wind. The only piece that never fits is a newspaper item from July '91 about an abandoned gray Corolla at a park and ride off exit 143 in Auburn. The tag is typed wrong, 1 digit off, and the car is towed and crushed in October before anyone realizes what might have been under the thin layer of dust and pollen on its hood. When a case loses its car, it loses its anchor. After that, no one can say where they were when the world took them. Families split their calendars into before and after. Danny's mother starts writing letters to herself on the 1st of each month. "June, your gray sweatshirt is on the chair. I didn't fold it because you hate hard creases." Tessa's father drives I-90 on Sundays, window down even in January, believing he can smell a thing that's been missing if he just keeps passing mile markers. The girls' high school puts up a plaque. "Everyone you can see wants answers. Everyone you can't see watches the porch lights and learns what kind of darkness lives in the quiet between a front door and a curb." Time jumps. Phones become pocket glass. Search parties become Facebook groups. By 2015, the case is mostly a story told to warn new students about late drives and trusting strangers at broken rest stops. And then a landlord in Ellensburg cuts the lock off a 5 by 10 storage unit whose rent is 6 months behind. The unit smells like mouse droppings and armor all. There's a cracked fishing rod, 2 Rubbermaid tubs filled with women's magazines from the 80s, and a maroon hard-sided Samsonite with a sticker half peeled off the handle. The sticker reads, H. Doyle, Seattle, Tacoma, September 90, and a phone number with a Yakima area code. The auction starts at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. 10 people show up. The suitcase goes for $40 to a man named Walt who flips estate junk for a living. At 11:17, Walt takes a picture of the suitcase and posts it in a buy-sell group, Vintage Samsonite. Working latches. $60. At 11:29, a message dings from a new account with no profile photo. That's mine. I can prove it. Cash. Walt writes back, proof? The account sends a picture of a baggage claim stub, yellowed and creased, with the exact partial sticker ID number, 4438. I'll give you $500 today. Meet me at the fruit stand off exit 115. Walt, who has been burned before, says they'll meet at the sheriff's parking lot instead. The account goes quiet for an hour, then returns with a different plan. Tomorrow. Early. The next morning, a man in a baseball cap and a mechanic's shirt with a name patch that doesn't match his face, Rick, steps out of a white van. He has 320s and 105s. He has the claim stub. The stub looks right. But the man's eyes are wrong. When he spots the deputy standing on the curb pretending to be on the phone, he goes pale around the mouth, then says, "You know what, this isn't it," and backs away. He leaves fast, so fast that the van's sliding door doesn't close on the first try. The deputy notes the plate. It's a dealer temp tag, weeks old, handwritten, smudged. The sheriff holds the suitcase and does what you do when a box begs to be opened. He opens it carefully. Inside is clothing that doesn't fit the era of the suitcase: leggings with stirrups, a faded Husky football tee, a library card from Yakima County, a single white sneaker with a chewed lace, a thin cassette labeled August 91 mix. Nothing and everything. Tucked into the lining is a dry cleaning ticket from a shop in Auburn, stamped September 17, 91 Rush. Pinned to a fabric flap with a rusted safety pin is a photo booth strip. 2 girls cheek to cheek, smearing chapstick and laughing. On the back, a number someone tried to scratch away. The sheriff holds the strip under a light. The scratched number ends with 0143. Auburn's exit 143. The park and ride. The families are called. It's the first new smell in 2 decades. Evidence doesn't confess on its own. It needs context. Detectives trace the storage unit lease to a woman named Heather Doyle who died in 2013. Her son, who lives in Boise, says he kept paying the unit cash as a favor to a friend of mom's from church, who moved away. The friend's name? Rick something. The Boise son doesn't have Rick's last name or won't say it. But the man in the baseball cap has a habit he can't shake. He buys templates at a certain lot on the edge of town. When detectives pull sales records, 3 vans in the last 3 years have left that lot with temp tags sold for cash to a man who never gives a home address. The name on the forms changes. The loop of the capital, R, does not. Sometimes a case cracks like glass. Sometimes it creaks like a door you're not sure you should open. The cassette from the suitcase is blank on side A until the hiss crackles and music bleeds through. Rush, Tom Sawyer. Then a voice, plucky and nasal, complaining about the radio. 2 girls talk over the chorus like girls do when they're in a car and the windows are fogging from breath and the road is long. Tessa sings off-key. Danny laughs. There's a tap on the window and the laugh becomes a question mark. A man says, "Phones off, please," which makes no sense in 1991. You can hear the shift lever slide into park. The tape sputters. A door opens. Another voice lower, "Pop your trunk." Someone says, "Is this an inspection? What is this?" The tape stutters to gray. When police release a 15-second clip to the public, 24 people swear the voice belongs to a state patrolman who retired in 1999. It doesn't. The retired patrolman lives 2 states away and spends his mornings posting weather photos online. But a former tow truck driver calls in to say he remembers a man who set up nighttime safety checks near the park and ride in 91, flashing a mag light like a badge and asking drivers to pop their trunks. He had a van with a cage up the middle, the driver says, so dogs couldn't jump forward. He doesn't know the man's name. He knows the van had a cracked sunroof with duct tape on the seam. Detectives go to Auburn and pull old business licenses, church rosters, towing contracts, and shop receipts. They find a service ticket from September 20, 1991, for a white Ford van registered to R. Kate Doyle, handyman. The ticket notes a complaint: door sticks. Sliding track slow. Replace. The mechanic's handwriting curls around the letters like ivy. FBI composites are ordered, not because there's a face to draw, but because people need to see a face to keep talking. The story breathes. It also pulls in new oxygen from strange places. The storage auction buyer, Walt, mentions that before the weird Facebook message another user commented, "That model suitcase has a false bottom." Walt shrugs. People say anything for attention. But a tech at the lab bumps the corners and hears a knock that isn't empty. They peel back the lining and find an envelope sealed inside the shell. Inside the envelope is a Polaroid of a license plate, blurry, tilted, but legible enough for a partial. The lab enhances it. The numbers look like 2MK914. The Department of Licensing says it could be 3 different vehicles from that era. One of them is a Ford van registered to Doyle Home Repair. If you've been listening, you already knew the name. Detectives knock on the door of Rick Doyle, not the dead woman Heather's last name by coincidence, but her ex-husband's cousin. He's now 63, lives in a modular home behind a chain-link fence 20 miles from where Danny and Tessa were last seen. He answers wearing a mechanic's shirt that says Rick. He smiles the smile people use when they've practiced not looking surprised. "You took my suitcase," he says too quickly, like he's been waiting to say it. The auction was irregular. The deputy who watched him flinch at the parking lot says nothing. The detective notes the van parked under the poplar. No sliding door, no cage, different era. Neighbors say he feeds strays and mows his lawn in perfect diagonals. Church people say he runs a men's group. A guy at a wrecking yard says he knows a guy who knows a guy who remembers a cage. Search warrants turn up nothing that passes the court's definition of proof. 2 house cats, 3 tubs of nuts and bolts, a box of sermon pamphlets, and in the back of a closet, a cardboard moving box labeled travel. Inside, bag claim stubs, all from the early 90s, all yellow and creased. No one keeps baggage claim stubs for 30 years unless they collect things that don't belong to them, or unless they know what kind of story a stub can tell. Families watch this new chapter like you watch a surgeon peel back gauze. Hope feels like air and fire at the same time. The sheriff tells them what good sheriffs always tell families: we will not guess. We will measure. The lab measures adhesive. The paper stock. The dust inside the suitcase folds. Tiny fir needles that don't grow near Ellensburg. A single hair caught in the stitching of the lining that doesn't match either girl's profile, but matches the mitochondrial profile of a woman now buried in a cemetery in Boise, Heather Doyle. She touched the lining. How did she touch it? Who packed it? And why did a man show up with cash to claim something he wouldn't open in public? Every case has a point where the narrative wants to jump to the end. We don't jump. We walk. Detectives re-interview the Chevron clerk from 1991. He remembers the Dr. Pepper and the laugh. He also remembers something he didn't think was important. A man in a white van asking if he could use the air hose out back after the station had technically closed the bay. Said he had a slow leak. Seemed polite. The clerk points to an old Polaroid pinned to the corkboard of his memory. The man's hair parted just so, his sleeves rolled to the elbow, the kind of man who doesn't raise his voice because he never has to. And then there's the park and ride. After the suitcase surfaces, a volunteer with a metal detector finds something behind a tangle of salal 30 yards from the old lot. A ring box with no ring wrapped in duct tape. Inside the lid is an address for a P.O. box in Auburn. The box belonged to Doyle Home Repair in 1991. The postal clerk who rented it out back then shrugs at the name. We had a lot of Ricks. You can feel the edges closing. The last third of the story is not the confession you want. It's the confession people get when the person who knows the most learned a long time ago how to live without telling stories. The prosecutor says the case is strong but not trial strong. A suitcase, a stub, a cassette, a photo of a plate, threads that pull toward the same knot, but not a knot you can hold up in court and say, "This cannot be untied." Without a body, some juries will always look for a door that lets them walk out without deciding. No body, no case isn't a rule. It's a rumor that has taught too many people how to hide. In November 2015, a reporter asks Rick Doyle if he ever met Danny or Tessa. He says no. He says he bought the suitcase from a yard sale in 1993, and his claim was about a different suitcase he once owned with the same sticker. He says the world wants villains because they make bedtime easier. He laughs once, short and flat, and wheels his trash can down the drive without looking back. The camera records the diagonals in his lawn like stripes on a uniform. But this isn't his story to finish. It belongs to two families who show up at the storage lot and watch the unit door roll up and down as if the world could still give them something. It belongs to the deputy who pretended to be on the phone in a parking lot and learned the shape of a flinch. It belongs to a cassette that held its breath for 24 years and then, for 15 seconds, exhaled what it heard the night two best friends learned that not all lights on the side of the road are meant to keep you safe. The auction suitcase was claimed. Not with a receipt, but with a pattern. And patterns, once you see them, are hard to unsee. If you're watching this near I-90, here's your checkpoint. Look at the exits you pass without thinking. Look at the lots where cars sleep without drivers. Think about how many of our stories depend on strangers doing the right thing in places with bad lighting. If you know a Rick with temp tags and a habit of collecting other people's travel, maybe this is the tape you were meant to hear. Maybe this is the message he didn't expect to get returned. Don't blink. Tap like, hit subscribe, and come with me because we're not done. The false bottom in the suitcase wasn't the only one in that storage unit. A second Rubbermaid tub had a false floor too. Under it, a folded map with 3 circles around 3 different park and rides along 3 different stretches of I-90, each with a date penciled faintly in the margin. One of those dates is 8 days before Danny and Tessa vanished. One is 4 months after. The last one is stamped September 12, 15. The day the unit door rolled up for the very last time. Ask yourself, who circles a future? Here's what we know and what we don't. We know 2 girls left a party with a AAA map and a promise. We know a canyon can feel like a throat. We know a park and ride can be a stage where someone practices authority until it fits like a uniform. We know a suitcase crossed decades and hands and finally said the quiet part out loud. We don't know whether the river took them, whether asphalt kept a secret, or whether a van's sliding door stuck at the exact wrong moment for 2 kids who thought they were almost there. If you have photos from that Auburn park and ride in June of '91, send them. If your dad suddenly sold a white van in the fall of that year and told you not to ask why, ask now. If you bought a maroon Samsonite at a yard sale back when televisions were heavy, look in the lining. Not everything we've lost wants to stay lost. And to Danny and Tessa, if somehow the world folded in a way that kept you out of sight but not out of breath, this is us checking the trunk light one more time before we shut it and head home, porch lights on, not because we like the electric bill but because hope is habit. We don't turn it off. Not for $40. Not for 24 years. Not for the kind of man who thinks a claim stub is the same thing as a story. Stay with me. In the next chapter we go to the Auburn post office, and we ask a clerk to show us box 143. We ask what happens to letters no one comes to collect. We ask who signed the last key card in 1991, and we ask why the signature looks like it was written by someone trying hard not to be themselves. Because sometimes the missing aren't gone. They're filed. And a suitcase is just a filing cabinet that travels. The post office is the kind of place that ages in straight lines. Brass boxes. Wax floor. A clock that clicks a second at a time like it's counting receipts. Auburn, Washington. Tuesday 9:02 a.m. Box 143 has a scar across its face where a key slipped once and bit metal. The clerk, gray cardigan, name tag Ella, slides a ledger across the counter like a deck of cards nobody's allowed to play. Who held 143 in June of '91? The detective asks. Ella doesn't answer. She turns the book to a page with blocky writing and tidy check marks. Doyle Home Repair, she says finally, finger on a line. Opened March 1990. Auto-renewed quarterly. Forwarding order placed October 3, 1991. Then again January 92 to a church mailbox downtown. She squints. Crosswind Fellowship. Drawer F. The detective copies the dates. October 3rd, 2 weeks after a dry clean ticket stamped September 17, 91. After the rumor of an abandoned Corolla. After a cassette the world hasn't heard yet says, "Pop your trunk." Who had keys, he asks. Ella taps a column. 2 issued. 1 returned when the forwarding started. She frowns. We keep a spare for non-payers in the back, but, she closes the ledger. Only the box holder gets a replacement. Can we drill it? Ella hesitates, then nods to the supervisor. A locksmith is called. The drill whines like a dentist. For a moment the post office smells like hot coins. Box 143 opens on a breath of air that's been waiting 24 years. Inside, 5 envelopes rubber banded in pairs, a green paper slip, package notice, and a brass key on a motel-style fob stamped in cheap black ink. Ladder. No one talks for a beat. Then the detective says what everyone's thinking. That's not a hotel. He lifts the key by the fob like it might drip. On the reverse, a number 9 scratched by hand. The rubber band snaps. Ought spill. 3 church newsletters folded around donation slips with no names. A copy of a flyer, vehicle safety check, volunteer patrol, keep our community safe. A plain envelope postmarked September 18, 1991, return address, H. Doyle with a P.O. box in Yakima, addressed to Doyle Home Repair, never opened. And a money order receipt for $43 bought at a 7-Eleven in Auburn, September 16, 91, memo line, cleaning. The detective doesn't say pattern. He's learned the pattern shows itself if you let it. He opens the unclaimed letter from Heather Doyle. A curl of paper falls out, brittle and tan. A fabric store ticket, lining replaced Samsonite maroon rush, stamped September 10, 91. Who pays to reline a suitcase 2 days before 2 best friends disappear? The question sits down at the counter like a customer. Cut to Crosswind Fellowship, a low brown church with a banner that says Wednesday Men's Group, 7 p.m. The pastor's handshake is kind and guarded. He remembers Heather. He half remembers Rick. He fully remembers lending the church's orange traffic cones for outreach nights in the early 90s, nights where men from the group would help keep folks safe near lots and park-in rides when bad elements were rumored. Did those cones come back? The detective asks. The pastor looks at the ceiling like the answer's written there. Some did. In a basement closet, behind a garment rack of choir robes, there's a plastic tub labeled event supplies. Inside, laminated checklists, clip-on lights, reflective vests with adhesive patches where something once stuck. The patches' glue left the outline of a seal, round with an eagle shape, ripped away. The detective lays a vest flat. Reads the laminated card out loud. Step 1, stop. Step 2, ask for keys. Step 3, pop trunk. Step 4, visual sweep. At the bottom, volunteer patrol. What exactly were you patrolling? He asks. No one answers. The lab listens to the Suitcase cassette again. They pull noise like weeds. Under the hiss after the pop your trunk, there's a thin sound, like a TV in a motel room bleeding through drywall. An ad jingle. For notes. The tech hums it absent-mindedly until someone 2 cubicles over says, "Hold on. That's the Palo Mini Mart jingle. They used it in 91. Ran late nights only." The map comes out again. The Palo Mini Mart sat by a cinderblock motor lodge off exit 142. A photo in a binder shows a neon sign, Pioneer Rest Motor Lodge. They find the place by smell. Mildew, old shampoo, a ghost of bleach. The sign is long gone. The office glass is sun-crazed. The new owner says the old manager died in 2001 and the rooms have been in transition since then. Room 9 is a rectangle and used for too long. There's a patch in the closet floor, a square of concrete that looks younger than the rest, like it grew up somewhere else and moved here. Maintenance? The detective asks. The new owner shrugs. Wasn't me. They get a warrant. A week is a long time once you know where to knock. They're back with a chisel and gloves. The concrete is stubborn. When the patch finally lifts, it gives up small things first. A Toyota key with a split plastic head, a brass locker slug, the kind you slide into a bus station cubby, and something flat and soft that turns out to be leather, half a wallet, the pocket peeled away, the clear ID window empty. Nothing screams Danny or Tessa. But the Toyota key shape matches what came in a mid-80s Corolla. Under the patch's lip, someone scored a message into the old concrete before it was covered. No lights. On the cassette, a whisper had said exactly that. The detective lets the chisel hang. Even the air doesn't want to move. He bags everything. He also bags dust. Dust remembers where it's been. The lab will ask it what it knows. Back at the sheriff's, the brass fob sits on a blotter. Ladder 9. They try every lock this side of the Cascades. It isn't a motel. It isn't a locker. Then the deputy who pretended to be on the phone in a parking lot says, maybe it's not a door. He pulls a county maintenance map. The Auburn Park and Ride has a storm runoff system with vertical access hatches, steel lids with padlocks and a ladder bolted under each. Who carries a key that says what it opens? The sheriff asks. A man who doesn't expect company, the deputy says. They call Public Works. The old locks were changed in '98. Before that, the keys were generic brass, stamped by crew with their own fobs. A retiree remembers a white van that helped out on a night project once. A handyman guy. Said the church sent him. Do you have any old keys left? The detective asks. The retiree grins. I keep one for stories. They meet at the lot at dusk. The retiree produces a ring. One brass key has a familiar cheap black stamp. Ladder. We used to joke about it. Where's the ladder key? The detective lines it up next to the box 143 key. The font on the fob is the same. They open the hatch nearest the Salal tangle where a ring box once slept under leaves. The smell that comes up is metal and old rain, and armor all. The deputy goes first. Light breath grit. The ladder is slick. 10 feet down, the world muffles like a pillow over a radio. A tunnel ribs off left and right. The flashlight swings. On the concrete wall, a barely visible arc where something once rubbed, the height of a bumper, leading to a dark rectangle set into the sidewall. Not a tunnel. A panel. 4 bolts. Count your blessings, the sheriff says over the echo. Count your bolts. They lean into the wrenches until the bolts grunt and give. The panel door hesitates, then sighs open. Inside is a cavity just big enough for a person to lie curled. The smell is wrong, sweet like dryer sheets, sharp like rubber, something chemical trying to defeat something human. On the interior wall, carved small with something dull. D+T. No remains. No clothes. But in the corner, a waxy paper square. The deputy coaxes it up with tweezers. It's a photo. Polaroid. It's been there long enough to stick to concrete. When it peels, a sliver of emulsion stays behind like a snake of paint. The image is a blur, too close to make easy sense of. You see what could be an elbow. A zipper pull. A patch of hair. In the white space at the bottom, someone wrote a date. September 12, 15. The day the storage unit door rolled up for the last time. Who takes a Polaroid underground? The detective whispers. Someone who needs to look away while they work, the deputy says. They bag it. They back out. They breathe like people who've been holding out candles in a wind. Above ground, the lot looks exactly like a place you could fall asleep in your car and wake to a knock. A man in a vest. A clipboard. A flashlight bright enough to make you obey. The team splits. One group to the church to ask again about cones and outreach. One to the storage facility to pull camera footage from the week before the auction. Backups nobody bothered to check because we don't save that long sometimes means the hard drive is a liar until you ask it the right way. One to Walt, the buyer, to rewalk the morning he posted the suitcase, the minutes that bled between his photo and the first message. That's mine. I can prove it. Gosh. Walt remembers something he didn't tell because it felt small. Before the guy offered the 500, he says, someone else DM'd, check the lining. No profile pic. No name I recognized. I thought it was a troll. What did the message look like? The detective asks. Walt pulls out his phone, scrolls, finds it. The account is deleted. The words are still there, pale ghosts in a thread. Check the lining. Then, a minute later, he hides the first thing where the second thing lives. What does that mean? Walt asks out loud now like it's a new riddle. The detective doesn't answer. He's thinking of the false bottom in the suitcase. He's thinking of a false floor in a tub. He's thinking of a false wall underground. First thing where the second thing lives. He writes it down anyway. Riddles are just maps with extra steps. They take Rick Doyle's life apart politely. Where he worked, where he prayed, who he called. They can't place him in room 9 on the night that matters. They can't place him in a van with a cracked sunroof in a year without a camera on every corner. They can place him in patterns. Church cones, church drawers, churchmen walking lots with clipboards that say authority if you don't squint. At his modular home, he answers the door with that same half-surprised smile. Back again, he says. Do you have a warrant this time? He doesn't ask about the girls. He doesn't ask about God. He asks about paper. They look. They find neat stacks of clean things, oiled tools, folded tarps, rows of screws. In a closet, a banker's box labeled travel like before. This one holds maps. AAA triptychs. The triptychs are annotated. Circles at exits. One in Kittitas. One near Ellensburg. One near Auburn. Each circle is dated. 3 dates match the faint pencil marks on the folded map under the false floor in the Rubbermaid tub from the storage unit. Why do you mark park-in rides on old maps? The detective asks. Rick shrugs. People meet there. Church did ride shares. Back then? Back then. No. Always. Do you carry keys to other people's ladders? The deputy asks from the doorway. Rick looks at the deputy like he's a bug on glass. I fix what's broken, he says. Do you fix girls who laugh too loud? The deputy asks before he can stop himself. Rick's mouth tightens, not into anger but into a shape that says you go first. The search finds nothing that bleeds. It finds a single photo booth strip in a manila envelope, faces cut off at the mouth. Just chins and collarbones. On the back, the number 0143, scratched nearly away, shows up under the right light. You keep a lot of numbers that almost don't mean anything, the detective says. Rick smiles that practiced smile. Numbers keep people honest. They drive back to Yakima to knock on doors that answered 30 years ago. Heather Doyle's old neighbor remembers a sewing machine and a suitcase on a kitchen table. He told her it was for missions, the neighbor says, for transporting tracks to Seattle without the rain getting in. She laughs once short. Rick always had a story. A former tow truck driver remembers more. He remembers a night in '91 when a man in a reflective vest flagged him near exit 143 and asked for a lane hold while he checked vehicles. We aren't supposed to, the driver says. But his paperwork looked right. He squints like he's looking through glass at the past. He had a clipboard with boxes to check. He had that voice like a PE teacher you never wanted to disappoint. Did he have a van? The detective asks. White, the driver says. Passenger window had a crack with duct tape running diagonal. Did he have a badge? A flashlight makes a badge if you hold it right, the driver says. We all know that now. We didn't all know then. The lab finally speaks for the dust under the motel patch. There are fir needles not native to the strip by exit 142, but common near a maintenance yard by the river. There's gray overspray, paint from a van sliding door track repair, chemistry matching the blend used at Royal Auto Body, whose archive service book shows a handwritten complaint September 20, 1991, door sticks. Sliding track slow. Replace. Vehicle, Ford E150. Customer, Doyle Home Repair. Did you keep parts? The detective asks the old owner. He laughs like the question is sweet. You kidding? We kept everything. He leads them to a mezzanine of cardboard time capsules. The box with the right month yields a plastic bag of metal shavings, a receipt, and a photo taken by a tech who liked to document his work. A sliding door track, rust flaking like bark, and a cage panel behind it. Some folks keep dogs back there, the old owner says. Never saw the dog. They don't exhale. Not yet. Nothing here shouts once and settles everything. It whispers and asks you to add. Night again at the Auburn Park and Ride. The lot hums. Sodium lights turn skin into a yellow story. Public Works gives them a master for the older hatches, just in case. The deputy carries the ladder 9 fob like a talisman. They decide to open one more. The hatch at the far corner by the bus bays. The air is colder, the drop is deeper. The ladder runs into shadow, then into a side run the maintenance map calls a spillway. There's another panel like the first. The bolts on this one are cleaner. Newer hands have touched them. The wrenches grunt, then something whispers past the deputy's ear, a draft from a seam you wouldn't see unless you were looking. Inside the cavity, nothing, at first. Then the deputy's light catches an edge. He reaches in with tongs. Pulls out a police-style clipboard with no badge, just Velcro patches where seals once clung. The laminated checklist is the same. At the bottom in neat block letters, Volunteer Patrol. There is also a second cassette in a thin plastic sleeve. Label, August 9-1, Mix 2. The handwriting isn't Danny's or Tessa's. It's the same block letters as the checklist. The deputy lifts his light and sees it, shoe scuffs on the cavity floor, and fresh ones on the ladder rungs. Someone else has been here since the last rain. He goes still, light off, letting the lot's muffled noise seep back in. Above him a bus sighs. A car door thumps. Tires roll over gravel. Then, stacked on the quiet, a footfall on the hatch above. He looks up. The detective freezes. The sheriff has a hand on the ladder like he can keep gravity honest. Another footfall. Closer. Deliberate. The shadow across the hatch slit thickens like a cloud passed over the sun. Hold, the sheriff mouths. A cigarette ember flares, a tiny red planet, and arcs off into the dark. The shadow lingers like it owns the light. Then it moves away, slow, like a man who knows he isn't late for anything. The deputy doesn't breathe until the last grit scrapes fade. They rise, silent. They push the hatch. It's air and night again. The lot is ordinary. Ordinary is a suit some monsters wear. On the concrete, 6 feet from the hatch, there's a paper cone of roasted nuts from a cart downtown, still warm, set down neatly, not dropped. Next to it, a dealer temp tag crumpled into a soft square, the ink smudged. The sheriff glances at the corner camera he knows is fake. He looks at the lot's edge. He looks at the church banner flapping 2 blocks away. He looks down at the cassette in the deputy's hand like it might start playing through his palm. Tomorrow, he says, we listen. Tonight, the deputy says, eyes on the lot's exit, somebody learned we found his ladder. The detective folds the temp tag gently as if it could cut him. He pockets it like a promise. Morning makes detectives honest. Everything you swore you felt in the dark has to survive coffee and paperwork. The cassette labeled August 91. Mix 2 waits on the desk like a dare. They thread it. The tape opens on hiss, then a tinny intro, Belinda Carlisle through a bad antenna, then the same girl's chatter from mix 1 ribbon tighter like time learned to breathe shallower. Halfway through track 2, a new sound bleeds in, a bullhorn and applause, and a voice on a PA. Next up, for H showmanship and ring B funnel cakes are 2 for 1 till 9. The tech hits stop. That isn't a motel, he says. The deputy is already pulling a county map. King County Fairgrounds, Auburn, he says. They ran late-night events all summer. 91 calendar puts 4H the same week the girls vanished. The sheriff circles a rectangle on the map, the grandstand. Room built under light everyone trusts, he says softly. Bleachers. The second key shows itself the way most answers do, by embarrassing everybody for missing it. Remember the green package slip from box 143? The one filed and forgotten since 1991? The clerk who kept it tidy remembers something else. In those days, unclaimed packages went to a parcel locker, a metal bank by the back wall. If a locker held something too long, they tossed the plastic key into a catch bin. They dumped the bin. At the bottom, a blue plastic parcel key with a brittle, cracked tag, B12. Faded in pen, barely there, F-D pass. Locker B12's contents were long ago boxed in dead letter warehouse. The postmaster, after 3 phone calls and a chain of custody so old it smells like a library, produces a manila envelope banded to a log sheet. Inside, 2 laminated vendor passes to the King County Fair, August 1991, a strip of Velcro backing, and a motel-style brass fob stamped with cheap ink, Bleachers 12. The deputy sets ladder 9 beside Bleachers 12 like the beginning of a sentence. He hid the first thing where the second thing lives, Walt's Phantom DM had warned. The first thing, girls, hidden underground where ladders live. The second thing, the pretended authority, lived under bleachers. Fairgrounds in daylight look harmless. Hay dust, pennants, hand-painted signs about lemonade and now hiring. Under the grandstand, the world smells like metal, damp wood and old grease. The support maze is tight, a lattice of beams and echo. A maintenance man, thick keys, easy smile, says the grandstand had a storage crawl, added in the late 80s. Vendors kept stock in there during big runs, he says. It's weird back there. You want me to show you? He doesn't need to. Bleachers 12 tells them where to go. The blue-painted access doors are numbered in flaking stencils. 12 is at the far end, closest to the midway where the bullhorn would sound right above your head. The Bleachers 12 key turns like it's been waiting for the right hand. Inside, a narrow corridor with plywood rooms on either side, each big enough to hold kegs or a cotton candy cart. A humming runs under everything, the sound of lights dreaming of nightfall. Room 12's padlock is gone. Newer screws hold older wood. The door opens on air that hasn't moved enough in years. This is the room. Somebody told it to look normal and it tried. Somebody lined the walls with pegboard and hung extension cords like snakes. A work light hangs over a bare table. Against the far wall, a rolling cart with reflective vests, clipboards with Velcro shadows, and 3 traffic cones whose paint is a church orange if you've ever ushered a parking lot on a Sunday. But the room's shape is wrong. The acoustics eat certain frequencies and bounce others. The deputy taps his knuckles down the wall seam where the pegboard meets the concrete. Hollow. The screwdriver slips under the trim. The panel pries free. Behind it, not a cavity like the ladder vault, a full bay, sound dampened, rubber matted, with a winch bolted low and a chain looped with quick-release clips. The stale sweetness of dryer sheets again fighting something older. The sheriff does what he always does. Counts. Photograph it then touch, he says. On a shelf, a label maker. In a drawer, Velcro patches round with a faint ghost of an eagle seal printed under the fuzz. In a milk crate, disposable cameras, used rubber banded in pairs, their film never processed. On the floor, trapped under the rubber mat's curled edge, a sparkly letter S from a jacket script. The detective doesn't exhale. Tessa's windbreaker had the school S stitched above the heart. No bodies. No bodies. But there's something else in the corner, a trunk painted gray to look like part of the wall. The padlock takes Bleachers 12 like a handshake. Inside, like a filing cabinet that wanted to be a grave and settled for being a memory palace. Envelopes. Each with a park and ride name and exit number and a date penned in block letters. 3 match the map from the storage unit's false floor. More don't. This is a calendar no one was meant to see. Under the envelopes, a binder. Plastic sleeves. Polaroids. Each labeled with a date and a 2-letter code. Many are close, too close, for comfort. Angles from knees, elbows, shoulders. A few are of cars, plates at a slant. One is a maintenance hatch half open with a hand on a rung. Another is a clipboard set down on gravel, the shadow of a man falling across it in stripes from bleachers above. In the last sleeve, an ID window peeled from a wallet, empty. Tucked behind it, a library card from Yakima County. D. Harper. The sheriff closes the binder like it has teeth. Call the families, he says, voice even. Tell them what we found. Don't tell them what we didn't. Everyone wants handcuffs now. The prosecutor wants enough. The sheriff wants everything. They go to Rick Doyle as politely as the law requires. He opens his door with that small, practiced smile. He looks at Bleachers 12 in a bag, then at the photo strip the lab managed to lift a latent from. The print belongs to Heather, God rest her, on a sleeve that was stapled to a church newsletter used to wrap a vendor pass in box 143. He looks at the deputy's calm that isn't calm. He looks at the camera like it's another clipboard that needs boxes checked. You've built a story, he says. Stories are easy when you take your time. So's a routine, the detective says. Ladder, bleachers, clipboard, cone. You could run it in your sleep. Rick's eyes flick once, betraying either boredom or calculation. With men like this, it's the same muscle. You've got rooms and keys and costumes, he says. Have you got girls? He's right about the law. He's wrong about the math. The math has changed. A fairground maintenance log from August 1991 shows a vendor assist called in at 11:18 p.m. room 12. Door sticks. Sliding track slow. The handwriting curls like ivy, the same tech who later wrote sliding track slow. Replace on a van. Across years and miles, someone's habit stitched 2 doors to the same hand. A tow company service chit surfaces from a box a clerk kept because she hates waste. August 18, 1991. Park and ride, exit 143. Caller, volunteer patrol. Vehicle moved to row F4 overnight safety. The car description matches a gray Corolla without recording a plate. The Mix 2 tape, cleaned, yields another voice under the PA. The bullhorn man counting like he's comfortable telling crowds where to be. Men's group, meet by the bleachers. The man on Rick's porch glances once at a church bulletin on his own hall table. This week's with a calendar that still runs on Wednesdays. You learn a predator by the way he looks at a pattern like it's a mirror. They read him his rights. You can almost hear him checking boxes in his head, clipboard Velcro ghosting under his fingers. At the station he asks for a lawyer and a glass of water. He gets both. Do we tell them? The deputy asks. About the bay. About the room. About how close this is to being done. Tell them what we can prove, the sheriff says. And tell them what we're still looking for. They take Danny's mother and Tessa's father through the rooms. First in words, then hours later in person. They don't flinch at the smell. They stand under bleachers where families cheer goats and blue ribbons, and they listen to how sound lies. They run their fingers over pegboard holes and understand the difference between absence and emptiness. A tech opens the first of the envelopes from the gray trunk. Inside, clipped newspaper about a safety check, a service ticket stub, a fat black line over a name. Another holds a coin-op locker stub from a bus depot, Baby Locker 12. Another holds a map with circles around lots no one has searched because memory fails where maps don't. This man archived himself, the detective says. He filed his nights. People think monsters brag, the sheriff says. Most of them just tidy. The bus depot locker gives up a duffel with vests, cones, a mag light with a grind mark where a badge sticker once lived, and a clipboard whose back panel is hollow, just deep enough to hide a cassette. Label, September 9/1, clean. The memo on that old money order said cleaning. Now the word feels like a ritual. They play it. It is not music. It is procedure. Fabric tearing. A spray bottle hiss. A man breathing like he's measuring. At the end, a single knock, wood on wood, 4 beats apart. Then silence. Where do you hear that? The tech asks, rewinding the knock until it becomes another kind of metronome in the room. The deputy closes his eyes. Then opens them toward the grandstand. Under the risers, he says. Workers knock when they're done. Signal for the lights. They go back with cadaver dogs not because they believe the worst, but because they're done pretending the worst isn't possible. The dogs work the lattice like music. They sit twice. Once under Section D, once at the back gate where vendors roll in right beside Bay 12. Ground-penetrating radar writes striations under the dirt, disturbed earth now settled, and a drain line that curves where the plan says it should run straight. They open the line. A tech pulls filters with tweezers, slow, like he's turning pages in a book that cuts fingers. Fiber. Thread. A hair. A sliver of a photographic emulsion that matches the brand of Polaroid found underground. Enough molecules to stack against a name. Enough pattern to walk into a court that has learned to expect doubt and say, this is buildable. The prosecutor's voice changes. We can indict on kidnapping with aggravating factors, she says. We tie the room, the key, the tapes, the map, the vest, we move. No bodies. But this time, no door big enough for a jury to walk out without deciding. The sheriff calls the families again. He doesn't promise what he can't. He promises this, We have the room. We have his routine. We have enough to make him answer. Danny's mother says, "If we don't get them back, I want him to give me one thing they touched." The sheriff says, "We have more than one." He means the library card. He means the S. He means the laugh caught in a tape hiss the world finally heard. Rick Doyle sits behind glass and sips his water. His lawyer says no comment. He doesn't look at the camera. He looks at the clock. Men who run on routines trust clocks. They think clocks will outrun truth. The deputy stands in the hallway, feeling the ache of almost in his bones. He thinks about a suitcase sold for $40, about a message that said check the lining, about a parcel locker key snoozing under old forms, about Bleachers 12 waiting on a hook for a hand that never came back, about a church that lent its orange and looked away. He turns the Bleachers 12 fob over once, twice, and stops when he notices a hairline crack near the hole. Inside the split, a shock of blue, plastic, not brass. He pries gently with a blade. The brass cover pops. Inside the fob, a rolled film leader, sealed from light, thin as a promise. On the leader, in microprint, Pioneer Photo, 1 hour. And scratched on the plastic with a pin, B9. Bus depot, the detective says, already moving. Locker B9. The clerk at the depot looks at them like fate has a sense of humor. "You folks again?" he says, fishing for a master. B9 opens on nothing. A false wall gives up something. Behind it, a sealed canister labeled 8mm. Home movie stock. You can't fake age. They thread it on a museum rescue viewer in the lab because the world forgot how to play that format and the lab tech has never thrown anything away. The picture stutters to life. Night. A lot. Sodium light turns the scene to tea. A white van. A clipboard. A man in a reflective vest moves like he's choreographed his own conscience. He's careful to keep his face out of frame. He forgets once. Freeze. It is not a portrait. It is a jaw, a scar, a part in the hair. It is enough. The tape shows a hatch, ladder, propped. It shows a panel, bay, open. It shows cones set like a still life around a lie. It shows hands used to practice. Someone filmed his own routine because tidy is a cousin of proud, and both think they're smarter than time. They don't sleep that night. Neither does the prosecutor. We end where we started. Not with a body but with a room that won't stop telling the truth. The fair board locks bay 12 with welded steel. The church throws away its old cones and prints new vests with their actual name, as if fabric could atone. The park and ride gets new lights that spill into every corner like a confession. The family set out flowers where dogs sat and meters chirped. They take the library card and the S home. They keep the porch lights on because hope isn't a switch, it's wiring. You can't see it, but if you cut it, the whole house is different. Rick Doyle pleads not guilty. Of course he does. Trials are for strict arithmetic. Stories, ours, are for the places math can't reach. So here's our math: 2 keys, 2 bays, 2 tapes. 2 girls whose laughter bent metal and outlived a man's routine. If you learned anything from this, let it be small and loud. If a stranger invents a checkpoint, check the stranger. If a vest has Velcro, ask what seal it used to hold. If a lot is dark, call a friend. If your city has hatches, ask who has keys. If your church lends cones, count them when they come home. And if you're the person who sent Walt that first message, check the lining. This is me all these episodes later saying, "We heard you." We did. Keep talking. Because sometimes the missing aren't gone. They're filed. And this time, finally, a filing cabinet opened where everyone could see it, under the lights.